everybody, welcome back to DW's Chop Shop. This is part 3 of TC Brothers Sportster hardtail build. This is for 86 to 03. And yesterday when we left off on step 9, which was gently remove the burrs from the inside of the tubing, and we used our burr knife thingy for that. So step 10, all right, is going to be reinstall the engine into the cut stock front frame half using the original engine mounts and hardware. Tighten, but do not fully tighten the hardware so that the engine can slide up and down in the stock slotted engine mounts. Okay, so the engine is over there where there's a big glare. So I'm going to pause this and muscle that engine onto this table and find all my bolts for the hardware that I need, and I'll get back to you here in just a minute. You don't need to watch me wrestle with that thing, it won't be pretty. Okay, that motor weighs about 220 pounds the way it sits, so it is a little rough to move. Anyways, let's see. Reinstall the engine into the cut stock front frame half using the original engine mounts and hardware. Tighten, but do not fully tighten the hardware so the engine can still slide up and down in the stock mounts. Okay. Let's see. Front frame half using the original engine mounts and hardware. So I guess that would be the top and bottom. So, easiest way to do this, I believe, is going to be to move the engine, roll it on its side, and then we can just set the frame on top of it. So, let's see if that'll work. Looks all right. Okay, now let's slide our frame on top of there. Okay, so here is the motor and the frame and a little oil spill. I'm going to pause this video, clean up this oil because we are going to be welding, and then I'll be right back. Alright, a couple handfuls of the cheapest kitty litter on Amazon, and we're all cleaned up. Okay, let's see, reinstall the engine so it can slide up and down in the stock engine mounts. We've done that, everything is hand tight. Slide the hardtail, backbone slug first, then the lower rails, into the stock frame until it fully seats against the rear portion on the engine and transmission mount. So we're going to push it in until this plate here matches up. Where am I at? Slight wiggle of the hardtail should be all it takes for the mounts on the hardtail to slide over the dowels on the lower two bolts. Lower bottom has some dowels on it. Let's see. To the respective holes. They're 3/8 by 24 by 1/4 inch long fine thread socket head bolts pass through the holes in the lower welded engine mount on the hardtail and thread into the two lower mounting holes of the rear engine mount. The coarse thread socket head bolts pass through the holes in the upper mount, the upper welded engine mount of the hardtail, then the upper holes of the engine itself, and then the flat washers and nylon lock nuts. Okay, and then we'll torque stuff down. Let's get this hardtail put on. This comes with a baggie of goodies, and I'm guessing all the goodies that they had just mentioned are in here. Let me see if I can find them. And there's the other nut. All right, get this hardtail on. Now the engine is sitting kind of tilted, so we're not going to be able to go straight in, but it wouldn't be hard. I have the rear axle on, kind of give me something to grab onto, but we go top first. Get into the bottoms. And it's not that the dowels don't fit. There we go. The engine needed to move. And get this mount in your slab where we tight. Tight over here. And block this up there. Okay, that's a lot easier when you get the frame locked up. I thought we could slide it in. We learned a little lesson. Okay. Let's see. Put the bolts in. Guess an alignment tool is crucial. And while everything in here moves, the motor is our jig, right? So once we tighten all this stuff down, it's gonna compress and everything's gonna be lined up. Okay. Nuts in through the top. And I'm just spinning these. They don't thread in, but it does help them thread through. Because we're just about lined up. And I don't really want to go beating on these with a hammer, because the engine itself is aluminum. Okay, washer. It does say tighten those all the way down, right? Fully torque all four of the supplied socket heads to 30 foot-pounds. All right. This ratchet will only go to about 10. So I'm going to go ahead and put everything in and tighten it down with this, and then I'll grab the torque wrench. What is our next step here? Okay, where am I at? All right, fully torque all four of the supplied socket head bolts to 30 foot-pound each. Note, when you're completing final assembly of the engine, after painting the frame, apply medium strength thread locker, oh yeah, to all fasteners before tightening the manufacturer's recommended torque specifications as listed in your service manual. Cool. Step 12. If you've made your cuts correctly, you will most likely notice that the gap at the top of the backbone joint is rather large, which we'd want about 1/8 of an inch gap, and that's like 1/4 inch. So yes, this is totally normal at this point because your engine is most likely fully slid downwards in the slotted mounting holes of the engine mounts. Absolutely is. Thus leaving your lower engine cases resting on the lower frame tube. Okay? You will need to raise the engine by either having a friend, well shit, I don't have any friends, lift on the rear of the hardtail, or by inserting your stock axle, I already did that, through the cuts that, whoa, where was I at? Inserting your stock axle through the slots in the rear axle plates and lifting the frame engine by placing a small jack underneath the axle. If your cuts were made correctly, you should be able to lift upwards and end up with approximately 1/8 of an inch gap between the ends of all three stock frame tubes and all three of the hardtail tubes. See figure 12. The gap is perfectly normal and allows for proper weld penetration into the slug tube in the middle of the joint for the highest final joint strength possible. When it has been determined that the proper joint gap is achieved and you have visually verified that the lower engine cases are not contacting the lower frame rails, it's time to fully torque all the fasteners of the original engine mounts to the manufacturer's recommended torque specifications while still lifting the rear engine. Okay, let me grab a jack. I don't have a small one, so I'm gonna muscle my full-size jack up here. Give me a second. Okay, I got a jack up here. You guys didn't have to see me struggle. I got a measuring device to measure 1/8 of an inch. I'm using a piece of TIG filler. You can use like the back of a 1/8 inch stick, a 7018. You can use a 1/8 drill bit. but just anything you can kind of stick in there as we start jacking up on this old drill. Alright, so I'm having some alignment issues. Nothing ridiculous, it's just that I'm one frickin' person. So I gotta find a way to measure these gaps. I mean, I can measure them with a tape measure, it's not a problem. But I need to be able to move the engine. I'm having issues doing that. So the back is torqued to 30 foot-pounds. The other 3 motor mounts are loose. I'm kind of lifted, well, I was, lifted up to where the engine, well, I guess I still am, is off the table. The frame is off the table, so I was hoping to be able to wiggle stuff around that way. And it's just giving me a challenge. Nothing we won't figure out. So this is probably going to be a time lapse of me just moving shit. Okay, so I was just having some issues getting this to lift by myself. So you've seen what I did with a ratchet strap, and I have the engine blocked up, so we just moved the frame where it needed to be. You've seen me make sure and check stuff is square, everything's square, all our gaps are good, and yeah, I guess that's about it. See, next step, I need to torque all of these down to factory specs. And the rear is 25 to 30 foot-pounds. It's already torqued to 30. The front lower frame side is 25 to 30 foot-pounds. It's already torqued. Well, it's not torqued, but we'll torque it to 30. The case side is also going to be 30. The front upper on the head is going to be 30. I got to find that nut. And the front upper on the frame is going to be 35. The front, or the top center on the heads, is going to be 30, and on the frame it's going to be 35. Okay, everything is torqued. What is our next step? Once all the engine mounts and fasteners have been tightened, you should be able to discontinue lifting the rear of the frame, and the gaps in the joints will remain the same. After doing a final check to ensure that you have proper gaps and that the engine cases are not contacting the lower frame rails, it is time to weld the hardtail to your stock frame. You're going to most likely want to place a piece of fire retardant fabric or leather welding blanket between the engine and the frame in order to prevent heat damage and or weld splatter from sticking to the engine, especially for MIG welding. Start by first tack welding the backbone tube, which is our top one. The hell is that? Start by first tack welding the backbone tube, our top one, and then both lower rails to the hardtail. Then continue welding as much of each joint as possible with the engine installed. Remember that the engine is essentially acting as a jig in this instance, so the more welding you can do with the engine installed, the better. Tack welds alone are not sufficient before removing your engine. Okay, let's read ahead just a bit. After completing as much of the welding as can be done with the engine installed, allow your welds to fully cool, and then remove your engine from the frame, and you can now finish all your welds 100% around each joint. Don't forget to plug or Rosset weld the 3 holes that we drilled earlier. Cool. Now, give me a second to get all this cleaned up and get prepped with the welder, and we'll get to work on that. Alright, got everything cleaned up. I'm all set up. Remember your PPE in this one, I would say wear a welding jacket, but I'm going to use mine as a fire shield. So we're going to start with the backbone, and then I will tack weld from the underside as good as I can, and then we'll set it on one side, weld as much as we can, we'll set it on the other side, weld as much as we can. Also, I'm going to MIG weld these. You can TIG weld them. With that backer in there, you don't need to pressurize the frame or anything, so you can TIG right into it. But I'm guessing most of you have MIG, so I'm going to MIG. And I would also urge, I don't care how experienced you are, but test this stuff out. You know, you have a chunk of frame, so run a few welds on it, make sure everything is set, because like I said before, this is going to go down the highway with my ass on it. I want to make sure everything on this is perfect. Okay, so we're going to get started. I don't do welding courses, but what you're looking for is a nice convex weld that's penetrated on both sides and pretty even all the way around. It doesn't look like a worm, and it doesn't look, you know, like a U. All right. Let's see. I suppose now we're going to take the motor out and finish welding her up. Alright guys, there is a hard-tailed motorcycle frame. Now you kind of want to do what I did here, and I ground the welds down. Oh God, I know. But I ground the welds down. Your powder coater is going to thank you, and you can see if your penetration is good. You can do that on all of them. And if there's any spots you need to fill them in at your own discretion. I know I didn't go real into detail on the welding, but I'm not a welding channel. And honestly, if you got as far as cutting your motorcycle frame in half and then saying, oh shit, I don't know how to weld, my guy, I don't know if I could help you. So yeah, I suppose that's it, man. I hope this helps somebody. When we come back next time, we're going to concentrate on getting this shroud off, right? And we're going to do what's called a window neck. So we'll put in a new top motor mount, cut all this crap out, and this is going to be 3 tubes, and we'll patch it all in. It's going to look really nice. It's going to set this bike apart once we get all done. So anyways, appreciate it, you guys. Hope this helps.